Thanks for joining me for this Adobe RoboHelp Essentials session on Microcontent and Chatbots. Just to make sure you're in the right spot, this session we're going to talk about chatbots and implementing microcontent and chatbots in published RoboHelp content. If you don't already know me, I'm Matt Sullivan and I'm the owner of TechCom Tools. Here's my email address, matt@techcomtools.com. Along with teaching and writing and creating video about RoboHelp, I'm also a FrameMaker course creator, author, trainer, and consultant. I'm a certified expert, instructor, and professional, those are about the same thing, in all of the technical communication suite applications. And I've been involved in using and training people to use a lot of Adobe CC applications all the way back to the beginning of their life cycle. That includes things like Acrobat, Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign. Now, if you want to know more about Adobe products and you don't have time for a book or a course or a consultant, you can always go to the Adobe Community User-to-User forums. You'll find me there. You can see I've been working with the program since about 2005, beginning in 2005. And if you want to navigate quickly to the Technical Communication Suite section, you should be able to find in this section right in here a technical communication and e-learning checkbox, which will then bring up these options right here. And that includes going right into the RoboHelp conversations. Of course, there's other places that you can find help as well. If you go to YouTube and you go to the Adobe TCS channel, you're going to find a number of different things. You have entire playlists full of things like RoboHelp training and FrameMaker training and new features in all of those different products. You find that I've created a lot of the video that's up there in the new features stuff in particular, as well as a number of things in the FrameMaker training series and the RoboHelp training series. And the last little piece about me, for the last few years, I have co-hosted with Stefan on the Adobe Data World Conference. Generally speaking, that is a 3-day conference, and it has thousands of attendees each year. As you and your organization get larger and more complex, you may find that your content does the same. Each year, Data World showcases many different organizations that are using Data, FrameMaker, RoboHelp, and Adobe Experience Manager to get better control of their content. So if that sounds like your organization, I invite you to meet with us June 3 through 5 in 2025. And just for kicks, here's a screen grab from one of the previous websites. It's got both a picture of me and Stefan, along with a short link that I created to make it easier for you to get to the registration page for the next Ditto World event. All right, back to our session title. Microcontent and Chatbots. Take advantage of artificial intelligence and machine learning to create chatbots and FAQ. Since our target audience for this session is not ChatGPT prompt engineers, and it's not hardcore programmers, we're going to spend some time getting comfortable with the concepts and the jargon that we're speaking about before we look at what we can do inside of RoboHelp and how we can set up things like intents and responses inside of the application. And we'll start with, what is microcontent? Well, it's small, easily digestible pieces of information that provide quick answers or support specific user tasks. That's pretty straightforward. We're going to use it to enhance usability in digital environments in things like websites, apps, and search engines. By definition, it's concise and it's highly targeted, and we're going to use it to guide users without overwhelming them with a whole lot of detail. So what does microcontent look like in the real world? Well, if I do a web search on Adobe TechCom Tools training, this is what I see. And even without digging into the different categories that we've got right here, we've got listings that start with the Adobe website. We've got headlines and titles. And then generally speaking, we'll be looking at either a meta description right here, or we'll be looking for a call to action. Here's TechCom Tools, my company, online training courses, and the headline's followed by something that's intended to get you to click on that link. But there's more to it. Within this entire listing, In the overall collection, you can also scroll down in most web searches on Google. And here, Google's gone to known authority sources like Wikipedia, giving you answers from Wikipedia with a snippet right here, along with other frequently asked questions. In the FAQ in particular, we have an intent, or basically a question, something that you're looking to get information on, and then we've got a response. And this talks about Adobe Digital Learning Services and the things that they could provide for you. Moving back to the top, we do have the individual categories. So everything that we're looking for, intents, responses, microcontent, and all that other jargon, it's going to help us categorize different things. So if we look at videos, the first thing that pops up under video happens to be a video that I did on YouTube. And it looks like that was way back in 2014. And Google's also gone in and pulled out 5 important parts from that video so you can jump to something if it's exactly what you need. Going down, you can see the last video that I did for Adobe. That was the Adobe FrameMaker Essentials Part 12. And each one of these things has things that are common in microcontent. It's got a headline, it's got meta descriptions, and in this case, a thumbnail to help you understand what the result is all about. So we're starting to see how important meta information is. If we go to images, again, you get a couple of things from my website, from the Adobe website, and you start to get things like the covers from some of the books that I write. Here's one from the TechCom Partner website. And we've just got the overall mnemonic from FrameMaker that's associated with TechCom tools. And the corresponding RoboHelp mnemonic as well. Google is particularly fond of all of this microcontent because the meta descriptions inside of there allow them to set up the shopping link, which allows them to start monetizing the search results and tether into their ad campaigns. Going back to the search results, here are some of the forums related to the search that we've got. And I thought it interesting that Adobe doesn't pop right to the top of that with community.adobe.com. So those are the more popular things that you can do just with a Google search. But if you pop over to more here, then you've also got books, maps, and flights, in this case, books. So when I click on books, I just get a list of books on that general topic. I think this might tie into Google's paid ad work because I did see a few days ago that a few of my books showed up in these exact places. So I think this just is kind of on a rotation more than anything with the meta description. So that quickly shows us what microcontent is and what it does and where you might find it in your daily work. So what about a chatbot? Well, a chatbot is designed to simulate human-like conversation through text or voice interactions. In all likelihood, you're probably already using them. They show up commonly in customer service, information retrieval, or personal assistants like Alexa or Siri. But the range of chatbots is quite wide, and we can set up simple systems in RoboHelp that don't rely on artificial intelligence and outside systems to come up with responses. But we do have the option to tie those AI systems in so that we get better natural language processing. Here's a list of things that are commonly thought of as chatbots and things that you might rely upon or lean on within your own work. A lot of them are fairly obvious. Things like ChatGPT, Cortana, Google Assistant, anything with bot in the name. And then you've got things that are built into common online commerce platforms, things like Shopify's Kit. Sephora has their virtual artist. And then Duolingo is going to be obviously a language bot. And it's good to get a sense of how chatbots can be used. Here's something I put together using my friendly neighborhood large language model, ChatGPT. Basically, it gives us a list of the things, the business reasons why we might want to use chatbots. It gives examples of each one of them. If you want to take a screenshot of this so that you can look at it later, or if you're looking at this after the fact, you can go ahead and pause the video. Now, I don't know about you, but some of these things, the perceived benefits may be in the eye of the beholder. Personally, I don't think of chatbots as being enhanced customer service. However, you can't argue that generally 24/7 availability isn't something you'll get with a live customer service agent. And certainly you can get instant responses and consistency delivered to different people asking the same questions. Of course, you'll probably agree there's a cost efficiency because you don't have a live person that you have to pay answering the same questions. And as far as improved user experience, well, multilink will support something you're not going to get with one agent, so I guess they've got you there. And I think it's the third column that has the most thought-provoking items. Chatbots can certainly increase the efficiency of things like e-commerce, healthcare, education, and finance. And when we create microcontent that has the appropriate amounts of intents and responses grouped together, then natural language processing, or NLP, will continue to get better over time. And as we saw with the Google search, that microcontent will continue to be better integrated with other tools over time. Now, whether you think chatbots are cool, like I do, or you just know that they're going to be a required part of your workflow, it's good to understand how the chatbot is going to determine its response. That's going to depend on how the chatbot was designed. If we have a simple rule-based system, then the content author is going to put together groupings of intents and responses to come up with what the user needs. Of course, the effectiveness of that is the system will only be able to do what the content author has allowed it or defined it to do. If your chatbot is tethered to an AI or a machine learning tool, then you're likely to get more sophisticated handling of the intent and perhaps come up with a more directed response. The AI-powered systems might be able to use a retrieval-based model, so it's going to go and look at a database for the amount of responses it might get. Or the intent may generate an entirely new response based upon the information in the model, much like what happens with ChatGPT. And for now, I'll step over the discussion of whether you want your information submitted to something like Google or ChatGPT to become part of their large language model. So once the chatbot's ready to return something to the user, a typical thing inside of RoboHelp would be text generation. The chatbot generates a text reply, and hopefully it's conversational and context aware and gives the user something that's understandable. Of course, chatbots like Alexa and Siri are going to have voice output available. So intents that are delivered either by voice or text might be converted back to speech using text-to-speech technology. And so wrapping up, here are places where you will commonly find chatbots, and hopefully places where they're going to make your life a little bit easier. With any luck, now that you've had a chance to review what chatbots are, what microcontent is, and how this stuff all fits together, you're still excited to move forward and get a chatbot going on your own site. You're even more excited about working with microcontent and pushing it into chatbot and other output formats. So let's start looking at how these concepts apply directly inside of RoboHelp. Setting up a chatbot in Adobe RoboHelp requires leveraging the tools that it has for content creation and delivery while integrating the chatbot functionality effectively. Even before we start defining everything within RoboHelp, it pays to put together a plan of what your microcontent will be and how you're going to deploy it to your end users. Know whether or not you're going to use RoboHelp content as the chatbot's primary knowledge source. In all likelihood, you will. And start to think about whether you'll be taking that microcontent and pushing it out to automatically created, frequently asked questions, troubleshooting guides, and how-to guides. It'll also help to know whether you're going to be pushing this content out to dynamic help, providing contextual assistance to your users based upon what they are doing within your content. And if these things aren't already done within your content, consider going through as you edit and breaking things up and improving the metadata and the cross-linking within your project. Online and application help works best when your topics are small, self-contained modules. Think of it as something that could be shown just on this screen. The longer the topic, and the more your user has to scroll within a specific window, the harder it will be not only to implement a chatbot or other microcontent output, but also the harder it will be to link to content within those longer topics. And also, irrespective of microcontent, analyzing your content to add descriptive tags and metadata to the topics will improve the search and retrieval not only of the chatbot, but of your entire system. That'll improve your overall internal search, and if this is public-facing, it'll also better index your content for internet search. And to wrap up the engineering portion of it, decide whether you're going to integrate any chatbot services, and make a plan for the actual output from RoboHelp. So much for the higher level stuff. Now we can get down to the nuts and bolts of what we do inside of RoboHelp. We're going to create one or more groups that have individual intents and specific responses to those intents. And here's what it's going to look like inside of RoboHelp. You can see that I'm using the 2022 release of RoboHelp. This is the 4th update. So when you look at your files or your interface, having the 2022.4 release of RoboHelp is going to keep you closest to what I'm looking at right here. I'm going to use the sample project right here. When that opens up, I've got my 3 views, my author, my output, and review collections of features. And moving in the author set, I'm going to move down to Microcontent, where I have the following groups already set up within the project. In my version of the sample project, I had a few duplicate content groups. If you have the same, feel free to delete the duplicates just to avoid confusion. I'm going to start with the FAQs. My FAQs are a great example because I've got intents and responses. I've got multiple intents inside the FAQs group. They're all simple questions with a single response, and all of my content is basic text. And while you might think of chatbot output being text only, it's not necessarily the case. If I come to amenities, within this group, we only have a single response, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the response has text along with HTML tagged text in terms of an unordered list. Looking at the code view, there's my HTML unordered list. Opening up the RoboHelp tips group, again, just a single intent and response. But this is pretty cool because within the response, I've actually got multimedia along with text with a hyperlink on it. So hopefully this will expand your thinking about what you can provide via your chatbot output. And likewise with benefits. Again, within this starter group, I only have one intent and response. But my response contains this HTML drop-down title so that I can add a little bit of zing to what my users see when they get the output from the chatbot. While this is a great interface for entering individual intents and responses, it is a little time intensive. Since we're assuming you already have a RoboHelp project full of content, and you know the content that is most important that you want to elevate to that level of micro-content for search, chatbot, and other output, RoboHelp gives you an easy way to repurpose your content from your topics as micro-content. And we're going to do it like this. First, we'll create a microcontent group. We'll call it Travel Questions. I'll go ahead and save that intent. Then I'll go back over to Contents. And in this first paragraph, I have an excellent response to that inquiry. I'll right-click on that, Add to Microcontent, choose my group, and choose my intent. You can see that Travel Questions has now been modified. And when I save the file to refresh the screen, I've got an easy answer for this intent inside of my existing content. So I'll come back to Contents, go to About Corporate Travel, put my cursor in the paragraph that has the response that I want, right-click, Add to Microcontent, choose my group, choose my intent. You can see that Travel Questions has been modified from the asterisk in the name. I'll go back over there, and now my response exists within the table. Now my issue here is that this response is a little bit more subjective than I want. So I'll go ahead and save Travel Questions, go back to Corporate Travel, and I'll retype this. And I'll save. Happily, when we go back to Travel Questions, you can see that the response has already been updated. As you identify content that you would like to use as a response, now you can go in and add intents. I'll go ahead and save that. Go back to the corporate travel topic. Right-click on the paragraph that I want. Add to microcontent. Choosing from Travel Questions. I'll choose my intent in need of a response and hit Apply. And fortunately, within the RoboHelp topic, your microcontent responses are identified by these borders, letting you know that anything that you change in here will be changing the microcontent that's associated with your project. I'll go ahead and save all. Go back to Travel Questions. And I've got my information right here. It's also going to be helpful to come up with some fallback responses. Those will be default messages that come up when somebody types something into your chatbot that doesn't match up with a response. To set up the default responses that we need for our chatbot, we're going to have to move from the author set of options into the output. In our output presets, you see that we already have a chatbot defined called Oregon Travel. I'll double-click on Oregon Travel. And while this demo chatbot was set up to be used with Google Dialogflow, we're going to ignore that for right now. And we're going to drop down into the client options where we can set up our chatbot behavior. For now, I'll leave my welcome message. So welcome, how may I help you is the first prompt that you'll get within the chatbot. And we can customize the default response in case the chatbot doesn't find a match. And we have a few other options in here that you can tighten up as you do your testing within your live environment. And I threw this one in just to be thinking ahead. At a higher level, consider whether you're going to need contextual links based upon user profiles or actions within your content. That's not something that's typically done at the first level, but it's something that you might want to do when you're with a larger organization or you have very sophisticated user needs. Once you've created your microcontent groups, added all of the intents that you need, along with their responses, it's time to publish your responsive HTML5 output to make sure that your responses are working on all the platforms that you need and accessible to whatever degree that you need to make them accessible. That's going to involve testing, so you might want to have some simulated user queries, and in all likelihood, a series of people that can physically test this on multiple platforms to make sure it's doing what they need and returning the results that you expect. So let's go back to RoboHelp and do some testing. In our author workspace, in Microcontent, remind ourselves of the FAQs. And in the FAQs, one of them is there a daycare facility? With a response about larger offices. Also, in benefits, the intent, what are the benefits, really has one official response, but is broken up into 3 parts. Those 3 parts are using dynamic HTML to separate it into effectively 3 separate responses. One thing that's important to realize is that microcontent is indeed content. And because it is so short, microcontent has a very significant impact within search. That is, microcontent has a very high correlation to the search strings because there are so few words or so little content involved within these tiny nuggets. Let's see what the end result of that is. Going to Output, and looking at Studio Compass Travel, which is a frameless HTML5 output. We'll generate the preset. And then view. In the output, I'll type in something that's close to the intent that I used in RoboHelp. And because microcontent does exist within our project, and not only does it exist, but it is considered to be significant content, the benefits topic is pushed up to the top, it's emphasized, and my dynamic HTML effects give the end user the impression that there are 3 separate pieces of information that are being delivered at the same time. Closing out of that search, I'll type another inquiry related to daycare. Notice as I type into the search box that RoboHelp is already aware and is giving me type ahead options for different things that exist in the system. At this point, I'm getting references not only for daycare, but also for Denver and other travel destinations. Continuing to type, and everything gets tighter and tighter until I can see what it is that I want, and I can just select directly on that. Again, we have results. In this case, we have 6 results. At the very top is my microcontent, both positioned at the top and emphasized so that it's the first thing that my end user will focus on. Moving for a moment back to the big picture. Once you've connected all of your wires inside of RoboHelp, consider whether your chatbot and other output are applicable to just the RoboHelp project that you're working on, or whether this would also be useful information in other places in other outputs, such as your corporate website. Once you've created all of the content for your microcontent groups, and you've tested it within your HTML5 output, and you're happy with the way that it's working, it's time to set up the output for the chatbot. Now, this is actually really straightforward. You're going to go over to Output, and then in the Output presets, we can create a brand new preset. The type will be chatbot, and we'll give it a name. The first question we need to answer is, how are we going to address the chatbot engine? You can see that Google's Dialogflow is available by default. So I can go ahead and click on that and then set my output path. We'll just go down in order and look at the content. Now I have a chance to choose exactly the microcontent that I want and do not want to include in my chatbot. Since this chatbot will be specifically for my Compass Travel company, I'll choose amenities. I won't choose RoboHelp tips. We'll assume that benefits is for internal employees, but FAQs and Oregon Chat are both customer related. Clicking away from the dialog box, I now have these 3 microcontent groups added. They'll all be sent up into the chatbot. Come over to Dialogflow, and here I'm going to need the client info JSON. That's JavaScript object notation. I'll need the JSON for Dialogflow, and you note that there's a link for the step-by-step guide to get to that JSON file. I'll show you what that looks like. And so this page talks about how it is that you get a Dialogflow API. But Dialogflow is a paid service. And if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll find that there is a free trial. In fact, you can get at least a $600 credit for a no-charge trial. And that gives you about 1 year to sign up and use these credits, as long as you don't burn through all of the chatbot credits, and you do this all within a year and you cancel, then of course it'll be no charge to you. For this demo, I'm not going to go through setting up that trial. So I'll just outline the steps that you'll go through once you have your Google Cloud subscription and your free trial and you get that JSON. Here's where you'd put in that JSON information, then saving the file. And once you've got your connection to Dialogflow working, you're going to go ahead and publish this, and that will send those microcontent groups that we specified into the Dialogflow server. To make use of that service and those content groups that you've uploaded, then you'll come back to the output preset that you want to publish. You go to Client and grab this embed code right here. Send it to the clipboard, and then go back into your authoring workspace. What you do next depends on where you want to see the chatbot active in your published content. If you only want the chatbot available on a couple of pages, say we want it on the introduction page, then you can go into the source, up into the head, and paste the script. Now, while that would make it available on the introduction topic, I probably want that chatbot available in more, if not all, locations within my project. So I can go to my topic layouts, and let's say that I'm using Studio for all of my topic pages. I can go into the Studio topic layout, into the head, and paste it there. And now anything that's going to be using the Studio layout is going to have in the head the script that calls up the chatbot, that links to Dialogflow, and contains the microcontent groups that I've uploaded into that system. You also might want to push this chatbot out to messaging platforms or apps if you're part of an application development team. And finally, evaluate whether you're properly using RoboHelp content reuse techniques, things like HTML snippets, to minimize the effort in updating your topics as well as your microcontent. Once you've got everything out the door, you'll be able to monitor and optimize your microcontent as well as your RoboHelp topic content. To do that, you'll want to have something like RoboHelp Server or another content management system. And you'll also want to have some sort of feedback loop to find out what your users think about your content and be able to correct any responses that don't align exactly with the intent, or perhaps identify intents that you need to add into your system so that you can generate the proper response. One of the great things about chatbots and the reporting that you can get from outside services or from things like RoboHelp Server is the ability to identify where your content is performing well, and as a result, find out where people are hitting a dead end and add to or modify the content to make it more intuitive. Sometimes that means changes to the chatbot content, but this is also a chance to look at where additional topics might be needed or could reduce the need to go to the chatbot in the first place by providing more accurate and timely information within the topic. And just when you think you're done, understand that a chatbot is only as good as its ability to provide information to people that are typing information into it. It might be helpful for you to create a quick guide on how to use the chatbot within your RoboHelp documentation, reference the chatbot within your topics, announce in any appropriate areas the fact that the chatbot is there, and how it should be enhancing their experience within your content. At this point, initially I'd planned on putting in some content that shows you how you can promote the use of your microcontent and your chatbot to your end users. But in looking at our sample project, I recognize that there's a lot of complexity here that might be getting in the way of your understanding what's really going on. So instead, I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to go to a blank sample project to give you a better sense of what is provided by default in the latest version of RoboHelp, and talk about both optional and required items that we need to put into our project to make the best use of our microcontent. So let's take a step back. Here I've created a fresh RoboHelp project, and even in this project, I'm going to strip out some of the things that I don't really need right now to get to kind of a bare bones on something that will help me put together information, which is microcontent, that I can then use in search, and I can push out to a chatbot. And this will give me logical places to put in those announcements for my users, or the fallback topic that I'm going to use within my chatbot. So a blank RoboHelp project. All I've got here is a first topic. I've got a table of contents that only has that first topic. I have no microcontent groups at this point, and I only have my default output presets. I'm going to quickly delete the output presets that I don't need. Creating a new preset for my chatbot. And then double check my settings for all of my presets. So now we're at a point at this new project where we'll need to specify the assets that we use in our project. And since this is a blank project, we're going to have to create at least simple assets to use to complete our project. Chatbots require microcontent groups, so let's go check that out. Author, microcontent, create a group, ask a question, and type in the response. Put in a few more intents. Cleaning up my punctuation while I'm on the way. And we'll save the MC group. Come back over to the contents, and you'll see that this has created a microcontent folder. Opening up my assets and my microcontent so that we see that we've got here. There's my MC group. And this will allow me to go back over to output, but MC Group is not yet part of the chatbot. So I'll just close this, come back into chatbot, go to content, and then it displays. Earlier we talked about Dialogflow. You've got to set up an account with Dialogflow and then put in the JSON information in here in order to be able to publish this chatbot into Dialogflow and then pull that back into the chatbot via the script. And the script, as a reminder, is right here. Saving and moving over to the frameless output. Going to content. I haven't set up an index yet, so I will deselect that option. And then since this is a blank project, I don't have a template, I've got to go find one. We'll stick with Studio, but top navigation is also an alternate layout for that Studio layout, so it's got the same sorts of colors and graphics. It's kind of interesting. And to me, it feels real nice if you're going to have, say, mobile output as one of your primary uses. But we'll go with the Studio. I'll change the name of that a little bit, just so I've got a separation from the default Studio. And then we get into this great skin editor that allows us to do lots of things like setting up the images for our table of contents buttons and the images directly above them, and things like GDPR compliance. In particular, the Studio output has a significant difference between the home page look and feel and topic pages. So you have actually almost different editors and different options for what happens on that initial layout, that initial homepage, and then how you navigate and work with your material and display it on the topic pages. I'll go ahead and hit save, close that out, close out the Studio demo, and even the chatbot. Moving on from the frameless HTML5 output, we've got this output preset called Microcontent. And this is a bit of a sleeper topic. So we don't have a lot of options here. We can set where we put it, what the format would be, and which microcontent groups we use to publish to microcontent, and then finally just where we're going to place it or push it using a server. But microcontent relates back to almost the very first topic in this presentation, and that is Google search. We can directly tie the output preset for microcontent to the search results that we see here. So for Adobe TechCom Tools training, this microcontent output preset is what Google is using to create all the segmentation within the search engine results page that we're looking at here. So within your microcontent and your groups, the better you can define video, images, products and shopping, forum, web, and news, not only does this help you in your own internal search, but public-facing projects and output are going to benefit from rich snippets and rich results like recipe cards, FAQs, event listings, or product ratings. And not only does it help you segment your content into the appropriate area, but more detailed, structured data will be a key factor in how Google will push your results up above other things that do not contain those items. It's time to start wrapping everything up, so definitely this is a good point to regroup. Among the things that I've covered, and not necessarily in chronological order, we discussed microcontent in terms of RoboHelp's use of microcontent groups. In RoboHelp, a microcontent group is a collection of intents and responses, and among other things, it's going to immediately assist you in elevating your own content within the search in your own published projects. Intents have responses, and those responses can be created independently in the provided table within the microcontent group and associated with a specific intent. But responses can also be pulled from topics and linked to their original text. And as I showed, this is an excellent way to increase your content reuse within your own system. Beyond creating the microcontent, we can also publish that microcontent. And the microcontent output presets are in the output workspace, not in the authoring workspace. Microcontent output is useful for producing all of the metadata needed to take advantage of the most recent search engine options available. This includes the things that float to the top of the list, like frequently asked questions, how-to guides, and lists of videos and video content, as well as being listed in articles and news. Once you're using microcontent in your ecosystem, you can look to provide a chatbot of that microcontent to your audience. Chatbots are an additional output preset, and they're going to provide a connection between your microcontent and a chatbot server. The chatbot server is going to be a natural language processing engine, and while they're not free, they are inexpensive, and you can get a great trial with Google's Dialogflow, which gives you an easy entry into the chatbot arena to see if it's something that's right for your organization. When using a chatbot, you'll need to grab that script from the chatbot output preset and put it into the header information on any pages where you want a chatbot to appear on your site. Clearly, we had no shortage of conceptual and technical information for this session. So, before you get overwhelmed, remember that with microcontent and chatbots, you're going to start small. Just go into an existing project in your authoring workspace and create one or more logical microcontent groups and set up a few intents and responses in one or more groups. After that, publish your normal output and test how the microcontent groups are reacting within your search results. That'll give you a quick win and a platform that you can build upon. To build on those successes, keep filling out the groups, intents, and responses as needed. Work with your subject matter experts to test what exists and what might be missing within your content. Fill any holes within your microcontent with existing content in your system by selecting and right-clicking, as I showed earlier. Once you feel you've got enough information within the system, get buy-in or approval to sign up for Dialogflow, at least for that free trial that we discussed. Upload that microcontent into that system, and then from your chatbot output settings, grab the script that you need and put it into the pages and the templates in your published output. And for bonus points, you can then explore how you can deploy that same chatbot onto other sites and services. And as always, if you run out of time or you just need a helping hand, you can always reach out for help. Here are a couple of ways that you can find me, my email address, and the way that you can book private time with me. But you've always got excellent resources in the Adobe community at community.adobe.com, the Adobe TCS YouTube channel, and resources that you can find on my website and on the e-commerce site that I've listed here. Thanks for getting all the way to the end of this presentation. I hope it's been helpful, and here's a quick list of ways that you can get in touch with me.